This week's show brought to you by Triple Doubles, Triple Doubles, Triple Doubles. Yeah, I know we talked about them a lot. We're going to talk about them some. Welcome back to another Boxscore Geeks show. I'm your host, Ray Alvarez, a.k.a. Nerd Numbers, and with me, as always, is our voice of God producer, Brian Foster, who you can find on Twitter as Boxscore Brian. Say hey, Brian.
Oh, what's up, Dre? I'll try to do my best this week and not stop at, 9 rebounds and 8, assists and all that. We're getting to 10 on everything this time.
Yeah, I was going to say the other night, DeMarcus Cousins was on the precipice of a triple-double, and the only thing that could stop him was fouling out. Anyway, we got a couple topics to discuss, mini MVP and or playoffs related. We're going to talk about Russell Westbrook. Of course, listen, there have been a few comments in the comment section at boxscoregeeks.com about sick of talking about Russell Westbrook. And then I've seen on Twitter people, these other players, da-da-da-da. This is historic. It's impressive. I've kind of had this thought in my mind, since the days of Kobe, which is, if something's interesting in sports, a lot of people are going to talk about it. If you don't like it, go follow something else. That's what sports is. We're going to also on the realm of MVPs, we're going to talk some Rudy Gobert and other snubbed MVPs. We're getting close to playoffs. The Nuggets are one of the few teams that could still be in or out. They're playing right now. We'll see how that goes. I might get distracted in the middle of the show giving an update on that. And then we're going to talk something interesting, an experiment with baseball, wherein ESPN tried to add win probabilities, and then we might talk the Celtics, although I'll probably, if we talk that, Brian, toss it up into the playoff picture. And I might ask Brian his thoughts on WrestleMania. So let's get going. First off, triple-double watch. Over the weekend, Russell Westbrook managed to put up his 41st triple-double, or I think he put up he tied Oscar Robertson's record. The record is 41 triple-doubles in an NBA season. Russell Westbrook managed to tie that, and tonight he's trying to surpass it. And, candidly, even if he doesn't get it tonight against Memphis, he should get it no problem regardless. They're, I think, 4 games after this one in the season. Russell Westbrook hitting a triple-double in 4 games is a cakewalk, and not only that, some of his triple-doubles are a little meh. The triple-double that he tied the record with, I think he shot horrible. I think he shot like 5 for 13 or something. So it's a cakewalk at this point for Russell Westbrook to get the triple-double, and it is freaking historic. Now, the interesting question I'm going to have on this is the only player in the history of the modern scheme of NBA voting to get to win MVP with his team winning fewer than 50 wins was Moses Malone. Now, for some backstory, because I know you guys tune into this show for history, the NBA used to have players vote on who was MVP. That changed in the 1980-1981 season, where they then had, the writers, experts, whatever you want to call them, vote on who was going to be MVP. And Moses Malone did manage to win that award early on. I think it was 82 or 83. On a 46-win team, but it's also just worth noting in regards to that, that this was a very early scheme, and Moses Malone was a previous MVP winner. So what I guess what I'll kind of point out is it didn't look like the voters had kind of settled on the criteria they have now. As another example, the Finals MVP is clearly for the winning team. The very, very first Finals MVP went to Jerry West when the Lakers lost. LeBron James a few seasons ago almost averaged a triple-double in a losing effort in the finals and did not win Finals MVP. And, no disrespect to Andre Iguodala, but clearly, if we were going by mainstream metrics, LeBron James should have won that award. But that answered a very clear question. There is an implicit criteria for the Finals MVP, which is you have to be on the Finals winning team. And we've talked about some implicit criterias for winning the NBA MVP, which is essentially you have to be on a top 3 winning team, typically be the highest scoring player on your team, and or have a really weird player move that shakes things up. So, Steve Nash and Derrick Rose kind of throw things into whack. And the way they worked is Steve Nash moved onto a 20-win Suns team, and it turned into a 60-win team, and he got most of the credit, rightfully so. And then the next season, Amari Stoudemire went down injured, and they only lost like 7 wins. So, essentially, it's entirely possible that a narrative overwhelms the criteria for MVP voting. It could happen here, but I would be shocked to see a team with fewer than 50 wins. And the Oklahoma City Thunder, I believe, at best can cap out at 49. I would be shocked to see them do it. And a funny note, he's not on great pace to get a triple-double as we speak. He easily has the points, obviously. He has 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals. So maybe he'll end up going for a quadruple-double. That would be something. But yeah, just obviously the MVP watch on Russell Westbrook and just the triple-double impressiveness. I've heard some points which are valid, definitely, which are, we have these arbitrary criteria. You pointed this out, Brian. Where the voters, if he gets 9.7 rebounds or 9.9 assists, might not be as impressed. And that is very true. There are lots of arbitrary cutoffs in sports. I think for pitchers and in Major League Baseball, this is like from Bull Durham, 20 wins means you're an elite pitcher. For players, we've kind of noticed that too. The 20 points per game cutoff, the 2010, cutoff for, centers. So I agree that it's kind of an arbitrary cutoff to kind of be getting this excited about. Certainly players like in recent years, LeBron James have, put up like triple doubles per 48 minutes, which is impressive as well. But, I just had to give it its due. Russell Westbrook's damned impressive. I really hope he gets that, the 40-second one, which should be a cakewalk at this point. And I think he needs to get a very trivial amount of assists and rebounds. I think he needs like 11 rebounds and 19 assists in his remaining 14 games to get that total up to where it would be guaranteed to be 10 and 10. So
remaining 4 games, right?
Yeah. So in the remaining 4 games and in this game too, I don't, this, I think the 5th game. So I think he needs like 11 and 19. I forget which one, rebound or assist, but that should, for him, should be trivial. So it's not going to be a problem for him to keep the triple double for the season record. It's not going to be a problem for him to pass Oscar Robertson. It's just damn impressive. And, this is what, we were talking about this kind of last week. Like, this is one of the reasons you watch sports is for stuff like this. So I still don't think he wins MVP, although, I ran into this before. Andrew Sutton, co-host of the show, beginning of the season, thought, James Harden looked like a great MVP candidate and thought that the I almost said Thunder, the Rockets were going to outperform. And I kind of went, whatever. And then that happened. And then we were talking about MVP. And I said, obviously James Harden, I was wrong. And Andrew pivoted and said, actually, I think it's going to go to Russell Westbrook. So Andrew's been right so far. I'll be shocked, but like shocked and pleasantly surprised with this. I don't remember the player, Brian, baseball better than me. There was a player that won the Cy Young on like with a losing record or a mediocre record, like 12 and 11 or something. And that was a huge deal, apparently.
Well, I remember, didn't Ernie Banks win an MVP when the Cubs weren't very good? I think was a big example of that, but that was a long time ago. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't remember. So that's my only point is this would be an impressive turning point for me because the voters have traditionally basically said we stick to these top 3 teams in the NBA. We look at the highest points per game player unless there's some weird narrative or you're Michael Jordan. And obviously Michael Jordan's this outlier that, is just will likely never be matched in the NBA. So that wouldn't shock me. Anything to top off the triple-double comments with? I've written a lot about this at this point, Brian, so I wouldn't be shocked if you're exasperated at this topic.
No, I'm not exasperated. I think, just what I said last week on this is pretty much right. We think Harden and Westbrook have both had really great years as far as wins produced. Westbrook is not strictly better numbers-wise than Harden, even though he has these triple-doubles, because Harden, his net points are just so high, and he has so many assists this year. And, he's had a great season. So we're okay with either one of those guys getting it. And if the Rockets have a bad record, why not Harden? I'm fine with him winning it.
Okay, so bringing that up, there have been seasons, for instance, I'll give you a couple. The 2001 NBA season wherein Allen Iverson won won the NBA MVP. The 2011 season where Derrick Rose won it, and the 2007 season where Dirk Nowitzki won it. These are 3 seasons that, gave me plenty of cause to be upset.
Oh, yeah, let's segue to the real MVP this year, Dre.
So yeah, that's our point. If we were given the number 1 vote, and by the way, earlier in the season, I might have gone with Harden, I might have gone with Westbrook. At this point, Rudy Gobert has just played so damned good that I can't not give him the credit he deserves, which is to say we think Rudy Gobert, head and shoulders, is the MVP this season. If you go to the wins produced page, which we still don't, man, Brian, remind me one of these days to change that, to sort it by wins by default. It sorts by name. But currently, the top 2 wins producers in the NBA are Rudy Gobert and DeAndre Jordan, both centers. So, we might talk a little bit about the center bias in the NBA with MVP voting, but Rudy Gobert has 21.1 wins produced currently. And a note that people kind of bring up, one of the normal snubs against the wins produced formula, there are 2 actually. One is, not allocating the correct position. So Rudy Gobert being a center, a stretch four, whatever. Obviously, in Gobert's case, that's not a problem. But the fact that he's a center means he gets graded the harshest. We compare to league average for looking at how good a player is. And I might get into this a little later if we talk Bill Russell. That's really important because in lots of businesses, right, if you and I run car businesses, Brian, if my car business is 10 times better than yours, it doesn't hurt yours. This is actually a famous Steve Jobs quote where I think when he came back to Apple and Microsoft was still the team to beat, so to speak, he made some car metaphor where he just said, we're like 7% of the market, which if in car terms would be this brand. I can't remember the exact quote. And he said, what's wrong with being that brand, right? If you're a normal business, comparing the magnitude of player A versus B, company A versus B doesn't necessarily matter for defining success. But sports is zero sum.
Yeah.
If you are below average, that directly means losses. That is how this formula works. If you are below average at scoring points, that means when you play teams that are above average, you will lose. That, the thing is there is a pie there. 1,230 NBA games, which means however many wins, 600 something wins, right, to go around between. I almost said 800, Brian. 615 wins to go around, right? So there are only 1,230 games in a season. Every time I get a win, that means another team gets a loss and vice versa. So when we have a player that is below average, that is a big deal. There is no excusing it. There's no coming back and saying, well, actually, no, if you're a below average player, that's bad. So when we compare Rudy Gobert to average, and the average we compare him to is bigs, and bigs are on average, lots of the word average there, Brian. What it means is, he's got the highest benchmark. Additionally, one of the other things we typically get dinged for is defense. And Rudy Gobert is the best defender in the NBA if you kind of go look at the primitive defensive statistics. We've started getting things to stats.nba.com. Now, provided, I'll give him full credit, by the way, Joel Embiid, when he was playing, looked amazing, but the issue we kind of brought up is his fouls were really high. And I think one of the issues that bugs me on defense, Brian, is that people do leave out the box score defensive statistics a lot, include the two major ones being rebounds and fouls, because a foul, we discussed this, is not actually the best thing on defense, because if you send a player to the line, even Shaq is going to score 50% from the line. So, if you're, we noticed like Rudy Gobert, the stats I brought up from stats.nba.com is he contests 10.3 shots per game, whatever that means, and his opponents shoot 43.1%.
Dre, I was going to say that. It feels to me like mainstream analytics in the NBA right now for defense, that's all they talk about is those two things, contested shot percentage and what they hold the opponent shooting to. And actually, in the last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about what those mean at any rate. But yeah, go ahead. Why are we seeing those so much out there?
I don't know. Actually, what bugs me is I don't mind that, but I don't see people dig into it. What I see people do a lot of is defensive win shares and defensive wrap them. Yeah. And that's baffling to me. So what I'm saying is, if you look at Rudy Gobert, his on-paper box score statistics, he records 12.6 defensive rebounds per 48. The average big, 8.9. He records only, 4.2. Actually, this is even more amazing. He records 4.2 fouls per 48. The average big, 4.6, and then of course he records 3.8 blocks per 48, average big 1.5. Those statistics on paper are amazing defense. Now then what I'm saying is if you go look at the additional defense, the how much you impact your opponent's shot, he's even better. But what I'm saying is, like, if you look at Embiid and everybody's looking at, like I looked at Embiid's numbers, like, holy cow, he holds his opponents like 38% shooting. Well, true, but he also fouls them a lot. And the difference there is if you foul someone, that's like at minimum 50% plus true effective field goal percentage, because most players can shoot 1 for 2 from the line. Some players even better, right? If you foul Steph Curry, that's like 1.8 points you've just given up.
He's the number one free throw percentage player in the league this year.
Is he still? Oh, cool. I didn't know.
Oh, well, he's close. But just to make your point, why is it bad to foul Steph Curry? He makes a ton of free throws.
I'm just saying the floor for fouling a bad free throw shooter is they're still going to be significantly better than that number we're talking about. Right. And then the thing is you're giving away a ton of possession. So I'm saying when you look at defense, you kind of have to look at everything together. And that always bugs me is, yeah, to your point, a lot of people, when they look at Embiid, oh my God, look at these numbers, they leave out very important ones. You can't look at Embiid's rebounds, blocks, and impact on opponent shooting without including personal fouls, because that matters. Additionally, right, If Embiid's going to foul out every game, that means that he's not on the court for a good portion, and that is bad defense. So just getting back to Gobert, everything about Gobert says he's great. I think the thing that people miss, I got into someone, there are a few flippant comments I got. One person pointed out, well, he's not great outside of 3 feet. If you look at his offense, we would say Rudy Gobert is great at offense. The reason being, he pulls 5.6 offensive rebounds per 48 minutes compared to the average big at 3.4. Now, this is something we might talk Rodman in a second. I think it's important because I've seen players called offensive liabilities and miss out the point that if you have someone on offense that can basically just get you the ball back, that is hugely important because even if you give a mediocre shooter 2 shots, that is better than giving a marquee shooter 1 shot for I think for like almost all the cases, right? I can't do the math in my head. But yeah, obviously, if someone shoots 50% from the field, if they get 2 shots on average, right, there's a 50% chance they make the first shot. There's a 50% chance they miss it. And then if they get another shot, there's a 50% chance they make that. That'd be 75%. You'd expect a shot to go in. If a good shooter shoots 70%, they're still worse than that other person getting 2 shots. So it has been baffling to me to see people like We'll talk him in a second. Ben Wallace, Dennis Rodman get called offensive liabilities when something they do on the offense is they just get the ball back. Getting the ball back is a tremendously valuable offensive asset. Now, the one thing he doesn't do on offense, he does not pass the ball. He is not a ball distributor. You do not give the ball to Gobert to pass the ball. And, his turnovers are about average. But the last thing, his shooting efficiency is absurd. His effective field goal percentage is 66.3%. His true shooting is 68.3%. The only ding we can kind of have is that the average big would take 16 shots a game. Rudy Gobert only takes about 11. To be fair, he gets the line a little more than the average big, and then, of course, he's below average than the average big at shooting from free throws.
He doesn't shoot 3-pointers, though. Get him out of here. This is the modern NBA.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, but one point someone brought up is they said he only really shoots from 3 feet in, and that is true. Like, if you look at Gobert's shooting percentage numbers, 85% of his shots come from within 3 feet of the hoop, and then he shoots very well from there, and everywhere else he shoots terrible from. That's still valuable on offense. Something Patrick and I have discussed a lot is people underestimate the value in being able to get good position in the NBA. They go, he just takes easy shots. You can't just get easy shots in the NBA. In the NBA, the opposing team does not just let you shoot from 3 feet. There are also rules additionally. People don't seem to remember this. The lanes, you are not allowed to stand inside of the key for an elongated period of time. You get called for an offensive 3-point second violation. You called for illegal defense. People miss out the fact that it is really, really hard to get really, really close to the hoop in the NBA, and the players that do that are good.
Yeah, Dre, you wrote about this a year or two ago, I remember. And so the argument you're laying out here is, well, it doesn't show any skill. It's so easy to just shoot 66% from at the rim. The thing is, nobody does it, though, right? Only a few people do it every year. So it's a very valuable skill. If it wasn't, then wouldn't more players be able to do it?
That is, now to be fair, that's a good question. We talked the Bop the Clown Nose offense. That's the Brian Foster. If you ever become an NBA coach,
it's Houston Rockets. They've fully taken this over this year.
The reason we call it that is, you basically want to go for layups and threes. Well, guess what? And by the way, let's give full credit to the Jazz. They have 2 players for this. They got Gordon Hayward for threes. They got Rudy Gobert for layups. That is awesome. They just need a healthy average point guard. That team, if George Hill is healthy for the playoffs, are going to be dangerous. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, Rudy Gobert, we basically said, if you cannot break down his numbers at every level, offense, defense, advanced defense, and not say he's an MVP-worthy candidate, of course, we're saying our suspicion is that he's going to get few to no votes. I'm going to peg him at 0. And the reason, essentially, when we look for MVP candidates, you want to look for players that score 20 points plus, and even the players that have broken that rule, Steve Nash being basically the only one. I still think people think of Steve Nash as an amazing offensive facilitator, and they will. If you tell someone Rudy Gobert is an amazing offensive player, they're going to go, "What are you talking about? He's a defensive player." So with that regard, we have a very clear reason, and then we had just some other names because I was like, let's give him some credit. Let's look at some other names that have been snubbed. Obviously, the biggest one, and this one's a little interesting to me, Brian. I want to talk this name with you because of your team. Brian Foster, if you're just tuning into the show for the first time, is a huge Golden State
Wearing my
Warrior
Draymond Green shirt tonight?
Awesome didn't go with. Well, you should have gone with. Well, actually, Draymond Green works too because we might talk.
Oh,
About it
okay. Let me just point this out before you go down to this list because it's a really good list. Everyone's saying this year that Draymond Green is going to win the Defensive Player of the Year award, and man, he's had a great year. I watch every game. He plays so well. He gets crazy shot blocks and steals from out of nowhere. He is not the Defensive Player of the Year. It's Rudy Gobert, bar none. It's not even close.
I'm mad if he gets it, and that in a way, something that's interesting about the awards that I noticed, and MVPs are this way too, is I feel that there are definitely makeup awards where you just feel bad for a player and you want to give them, I think Michael Jordan's 1998 MVP was, essentially a lifetime achievement award. And I argue the same might have been true of Hakeem Olajuwon in 1994. I think Draymond Green last season, I think people believe he may have rightfully been the Defensive Player of the Year above Kawhi. No complaints. And for what it's worth, on like the list, I mentioned stats.nba.com and contested shots and how low he keeps the opposing players too. It is worth noting right below him was Draymond Green, but it's not even like the amazing thing about Rudy Gobert to me is that he is the only player in the NBA, according to the NBA stats, that gets over 10 contested shots a game. And normally you would expect a player that has that happen, if you think like a hockey goalie. Our point on hockey goalies, we haven't written on hockey in forever, Brian, but our point on hockey goalies is essentially the biggest factor in how good a hockey goalie is how many shots on goals they have, which is out of their control, because most hockey goalies will do about the same. Rudy Gobert, despite getting a ton of shots against him, defends really well, because we've also had that argument on players like, Jokic or other players that are called defensive liabilities. We don't know if the reason they're bad at defense is because they're bad or if because their perimeter players just let a ton of players through. Nothing about Rudy Gobert's numbers to me say he does not deserve Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not going to be mad at if Gobert, Draymond Green, or Kawhi gets it, I'm cool.
Jokic did get totally posterized by Cody Zeller or maybe Tyler. I think it was Cody the other day. Did you see that? That was a ridiculous dunk. But I still love Jokic.
From my memory, given my big Jokic fandom. And then all I'll say is this: the same point of the MVP this season was true going into our snubs. Is there have been some years that have just incensed me with bad picks. This year, it is impossible for the players that are eligible for the MVP. There's not going to be one I'm unhappy with.
Point.
And I'm also like, it's funny because I don't expect Westbrook to get it, and he wouldn't get my number one vote, but I will be happy because I root for the novel. And if there is ever a case where stats overwhelm conventional wisdom, I'm in favor of it, because for F's sake, mainstream conventional wisdom in the NBA is just so maddening. So there we go. But I want to talk Stockton because here's the point. Here's what I found fascinating. I bring up Gobert as an underrated MVP candidate. And of course, the player I think who is going to get the love is not Rudy Gobert.
And let me just stop you real fast for those not doing the video show. John Stockton is your number one most snubbed MVP player with 5 different seasons. He could have been in contention for the award. So go ahead.
Getting there. You're being a good defender. You are being definitely a Rudy Gobert. You're being a ball stopper. But yeah, so the reason I wanted to bring up John Stockton and compare him to Rudy Gobert is, in terms of the Jazz, who have no shot at the MVP because they are the 4th seed, and we've kind of mentioned you have to be a top seed or do something historic to get the MVP consideration, the player that's going to get credit is Gordon Hayward. We already saw this in the All-Star game. Like I said, I'm willing to bet if the Jazz pick up any MVP votes, they're going to go to Gordon Hayward. And if Gobert gets one, I would bet, and we can even check this year, it would be because someone did something like Gordon Hayward number 4, Rudy Gobert number 5. But historically, the Jazz did actually have an MVP big, Karl Malone, and this player kind of eclipsed John Stockton, who we, as you just noted, argued was a better player in some years than Michael Jordan, than Magic Johnson, than Hakeem Olajuwon, than David Robinson, and Karl Malone. And breaking it down, this is a guy that led the NBA in career in steals, in assists, is top 50 in points scored. Is one of the great, probably one of these players that suffers from the Michael Jordan and Hakeem kept me from a title. In the 90s, there were a bunch of good teams that all deserved a title, arguably, and many of them didn't get it because basically Michael and Hakeem just kept everybody out. And the reason he didn't really get the MVP love is because of Karl Malone, because the way their offense worked in John Stockton's days is he would basically feed the ball to Malone a lot. Malone would get lots of points. Malone got most of the credit. Not saying Malone is bad. I'm just saying you have 2 great players on a team, and the credit primarily went to the big. And now what we're seeing in the NBA is this kind of love of perimeter shooters, outside shooters. I noticed that there hasn't really been a big that isn't a stretch big since Kevin Garnett that's won this award. And I would argue Tim Duncan, by the way, is a center. He can say whatever he wants. There hasn't been a center since Kevin Garnett to really, or since Tim Duncan to win the award. There hasn't been a big. Dirk Nowitzki obviously won it in '07. I brought him up before, but obviously he's a perimeter shooter. The MVP has really gone to someone who shoots, from outside, from mid range, from 3-point, for like over a decade now, which is kind of remarkable to think about. And what I was arguing is, in the modern NBA, would John Stockton be given more of a green light to shoot and be more like Curry? I think John Stockton, whose numbers
This
already.
is what I wanted to say next. Yeah. Oh no, we've got a Skype pause here.
John.
Okay, well, Dre's lagged. I'm just going to jump in and say what I wanted to say, which is, yeah, so Stockton kind of paved the way for players like Nash and Curry in that he was a ridiculous shooter, but he just didn't take as many shots because point guards didn't do that back in those days. And you rightfully point out in this article that his efficiency was just ridiculous. And if he was playing right now, I guarantee you he'd be taking a ton of threes. But sorry, Dre, it looks like you're back now with Skype. Go ahead.
100% what I was going to say. We totally did a Stockton Malone there, passed you
That's
the ball.
right.
You dunk. Exactly. In a modern NBA, would John Stockton be told, be more like Curry? Take most of the shots. Instead of averaging, 12 to 16 assists per game, whatever he was at, I want you to average 9 assists per game and get 25 to 30 shots. And would Stockton then be the MVP player? So I don't really have a conclusion or thesis on that, but I did find it interesting that there was kind of a pendulum swing in the mentality. And one thing that I do think is interesting is the modern NBA does seem to still undervalue bigs. And I think there's just some hate of big players. Like I mentioned, when I brought up Gobert, people were pointing out, well, he just takes easy shots. And have you ever seen the movie Is Love and Basketball?
That sounds familiar. Who was acted in that?
Love and Basketball. Look up the players. I think there's the father in that movie was also the voodoo baseball man. 90s movies sound racist. The voodoo baseball player in Major League.
It came out in 2000 actually. So yeah, right after. Oh, I like the DVD cover here. Let's get that up.
All right. So in Love and Basketball, they're making fun of Kareem and saying all he does is sit his ass in front of the hoop and take easy shots.
Oh,
so,
it takes place in 1981. Interesting.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it was released in 2000, but it is set in 1981 Los Angeles.
Maybe. I think it spans this kid's life.
Oh, you're right. They're 11 years old then. So yeah, probably in the 90s is when a lot of it takes place. Yeah, this sounds familiar. This sounds really familiar.
What I was going to say is, yeah, even in that movie, that's that's a movie that's 17 years old that is placed 19 years in the past. Even that movie is making fun of bigs for just taking easy shots. There's always been this hate of bigs in the NBA as if they're just they're cheating. They're not working as hard, and working harder makes you more valuable. So I think there was a point in the NBA where even despite that hate, they still respected bigs. And I think it swung away from it because, I've heard like the death of the big. And all I can say is Rudy Gobert is as traditional a big as you get. And the Utah Jazz, 4th place in the West this season with some amazing, the freaking Spurs and Warriors are historic teams. And then the Houston Rockets, the Jazz should be a little upset that D'Antoni came out of nowhere and helped that team out. And, basically did the strategy that is right. It's just said, hey, Harden, here's the ball. Harden, take the ball. We'll do better. But, it's just I don't really have anything beyond that. But I will also note
I think it's really straightforward, actually, Dre, is that so let's look back to your list, right? We're going back to the 80s and 90s. Who are the good big men back then that everyone now pines for and is like, oh, I wish we had these guys again? It's Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, players that scored a lot of points. And then on your list, we have Ben Wallace, we have Dennis Rodman, we have Dikembe Mutombo, equally good, if not better, big men during that period of time that did not score a lot of points. They did not win any MVPs. It's just points here, I think.
And what I'm saying is, what was interesting is I thought there was kind of a sort of mutual respect for bigs in that balance. But then I think if you tip 2 points to the right on a big, right, if a big like Dwight Howard gets 18 points, 12 rebounds, and 3 blocks, suddenly that drops out of favor. Although, yeah, Dwight Howard not getting MVP in 2011 is just a travesty. I don't have anything. I don't have much else. Obviously, Chris Paul, we're kind of sad for. Missed his window, one of the best ever. And then obviously all the love in the world to Ben Wallace, Dikembe Mutombo, and Dennis Rodman, three players that just do not get their due. And just to be honorary and cantankerous, everybody bitches about the wins produced undervaluing defense, and three of the players that we say are undervalued were some of the best defenders of all time. So there you go. And also shout out to Sean Marion, who I think. Here's an interesting point. This wasn't on the script. Tracy McGrady got first ballot Hall of Fame honors, I think. Is it first ballot or second ballot?
Oh, I can't remember. That's the one, the class that just went in, right? He was part of that.
It's the 2017 class. Mm-hmm. The traditional rules are 5 years. However, I believe they changed the rule recently. Remember, with Allen Iverson, Shaquille O'Neal, the Tracy McGrady, not Tracy McGrady, the Yao Ming, Shaquille O'Neal, Allen Iverson class. They changed the rules slightly for eligibility. So
I know that for the writers and some fans, it's like, ooh, are they a first ballot guy or not? That's a big deal. I don't care about that. I think your point stands. He got in pretty quickly after he retired, no matter what, right? So he's considered a good player.
It's weird. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is it's weird for me because, I think Sean Marion deserves first ballot Hall of Fame status. He was amazing. But then when I started looking up his numbers, I was shocked at how low his accolades were, how few All-NBA teams, how few All-Star games, etc. But Tracy McGrady, this is going to sound mean, has set the bar pretty low in terms of who belongs in the Hall of Fame really quick. I mean, not to be mean, right? Tracy McGrady, his last season was 2012. So
what about his international career? Did he get any? He on those gold medal teams at all, or maybe he was on the teams that lost to Argentina? I don't know.
I don't know. And
college career, of course, he didn't have much of one.
He had none. He was a high player. He was part of that wave with Kobe Bryant, the high school players, the next gen.
Oh, and to clarify all this, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame, so it's his combined, works, not just what he did in the NBA. That's why I bring this up.
He just has NBA and whatever Olympic he did. It's kind of. I don't know, but so I mean, it sounds like a mean way of phrasing it. He's part of he's part of the 100-win club. People who've who earned over 100 wins produced in their career, just barely. He was a good player, just he was not at this level that I would pick other, including Sean Marion. So all I'm saying is, if he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, the ballot for a first ballot Hall of Famer is pretty low.
But then again, I'll say the same thing. He's just scored way more points than Marion, so that's all there is to it. And Marion was not like a low point scorer, but he never had those 30-point per game seasons like McGrady.
But what's annoying is, basketball's a team game too, and it's like when you're on a super team, that you could argue that was one of Dennis Rodman's skills on the Bulls. When you're on a Bulls team with Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc, not Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, and Michael Jordan.
Steve Kerr, even for that matter.
I said Steve Kerr.
Did you? Sorry. I'm so deaf, Dre. I'm so deaf.
You should never shoot. And like this, that's the funny thing. I do not have time for this, so Brian, I'm just going to try and tell future Dre, when you listen back this, you really need to write up the Bill Russell post. We didn't talk enough about it to count to let you out of it, Dre. So please, 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 Bill Russell post. All right, Brian, let's take a quick glance at the playoff situation currently, and if we have any thoughts.
Yeah, we can do that.
Right now, I will say the Nuggets are battling like hell. They're down by 4 to the Houston Rockets as of this recording. It's a shame, but they're battling for that 8th seed against the Portland Trailblazers. And it's also worth noting that the Nurkic thing. What's funny, right, is now he's out injured, so nothing matters. Right?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, he got like a stress fracture in his leg or something like that. Some really bad injury.
Yep. But yeah, all I was going to say is that's going to be tough. Obviously, it looks like Golden State. My prediction, Brian, they get the 1st seed, but they screw over Patrick. For those of you not familiar, every year Patrick goes out to Vegas. He puts down some bets. The years he takes off are the years we would have done good. The years he's done, I think he's had one up year, one slightly down year, and then this year's looking horrible. And candidly, a huge part of the reason is, just a lot of stuff that has not gone well. Tuning into the Russell Westbrook triple-double watch, he's 1 assist away and then 4 rebounds away. Anyway, that being said, the Golden State Warriors look head and shoulders the number one seed. It doesn't look like the Spurs are going to chase them. The Warriors would have to lose out a very easy remaining 4 games. The Spurs would have to win out. I think they have at least one harder game. So
Yeah,
I
and
think
also the Spurs have a bunch of road games and the Warriors have a bunch of home games. So pretty much everything is against the Spurs here. Also, Durant is going to play in some of those games for the Warriors. He's not.
And all I would say on that is Patrick bet the over, which is 66 wins. They're at 64. My bet is they get to like 65 or 66 exactly.
Really? Oh, I think they're getting to 66. Easy.
No, they need to get to 67 because I think Patrick bet the over.
Oh, okay. I think they'll get there. I think they're gonna maybe lose one game to the Jazz and that's it.
Okay. So, but with that being said, whoever plays the number one, whoever plays the Warriors, same as last year. Let's just point out anything can happen in the playoffs, right? We had 2 3-1 upsets in the playoffs last year. The Golden State Warriors on either side of them. They're still the easy favorites, and their numbers are better than last year's still. Like that's, we kind of zoom in and out of them. But, obviously Durant, I was talking to someone else today about how the Warriors may win all these games without a first ballot All-NBA or a first team All-NBA player and likely only like a third team All-NBA player. And that's true. And the really, really hard part is Durant. I think Durant easily was playing first team All-NBA, but he's going to miss, 20 to 30 games. So is that going to be, are the voters going to not consider that? And, Kawhi and LeBron have played amazingly well. And then, it's really hard for Steph Curry to make a point to be better than Westbrook and Harden, which I don't have a problem with. So, I would argue that basically second All-NBA team needs to be Curry, Draymond, Durant. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. This is something I want to look into regarding Curry because he said in the media this week that he made kind of an advanced stats argument in the media this week, which
I love it.
Warriors players always do this stuff. Whenever they're arguing with the media about how well they're playing, you can tell that they really get it. And so that's why I love these guys. But what he said is basically, I'm not playing any worse this year. I'm just 5 worse. Okay, I agree. But he says I'm just 5 worse in points per game. Points per game is a bullshit stat, basically. He said it more diplomatically. So therefore, I'm not playing worse. Now, his percentages are worse. And I think the big issue here for him is he's really getting compared to last year, Curry, which is something you can't compare. It's the same problem Harden had last year, right? So 2 years ago, Harden had a great season. Last year, he was a little bit down. Then he came way back up this season to MVP level, right? Curry's kind of doing the same thing, I think. Like, one of the best seasons of all time last year. This season, he's just a regular star. I don't think it says a lot about him.
Complaints, too. I mean, this both Curry and Clay got hit by this, which is fine. There's only one ball, and if you have overlapping skill sets, you have to accept diminishing returns, which is an argument we've heard against us time and time again, but we agree with, right? We may say that Dikembe Mutombo and Dennis Rodman and Ben Wallace were all great. Were they all active at the same time? Could you have gotten a team with all?
Oh, maybe. That'd be interesting. And you'll probably laugh to hear that I reread the Ari Caroline floor stretch articles today, because I was interested in that. So that's going along the same lines. And interestingly about Clay, he's having a career high in shots per game this season. He gives no fucks about Curry and Durant. He is launching shots.
I think that went up after Durant went down.
That's probably true.
What I was noting initially at the start of the season was like, he's an amazing, like, if you look at Klay Thompson, we've always kind of said he's average to below average. But he's an amazing scorer. The issue is, even though he takes, I mean, you're saying he launches up shots. Can we go to the tools tab real quick?
Oh yeah, let's bring this up here.
Let's compare Clay to an average wing. And could you do it for both this year and last? Try to ask you to do a lot. And
yeah,
I don't really care having like Warriors talk. We love the Warriors around here. We love the Warriors.
Yeah, but they're just about to play a game tonight, so that might finalize their playoff spot.
Klay Thompson. I mean, I think they're done, but I mean, like, I'm not worried about them getting the. But Klay Thompson is a role player. We've made this argument. He really just scores. That's this other stuff is kind of not as meh, right?
Well, it's even more than that. He's a 3-point specialist. The 2-point shots he takes are not very good. He's kind of average to below average on that. This year, quite a bit better, but throughout his career, not so much.
This year he's up. But okay, I mean, essentially what you're looking at, right, is Clay gets what 20. Actually, that's pretty good. 24.9. I may have less of a leg to stand on. Yeah, he's taking the same number of shots per game, slightly less than last year. But on another team, he might take another couple of shots per game, and those extra couple of shots per game might be worth something. But he's on a team with diminishing returns. And then Steph Curry, once you add Kevin Durant to the mix, Kevin Durant takes shots too. So if you've got these players that were going to take good shots that are now turning into great shots with Durant, there's some diminishing returns. So I'm not tremendously angry at Steph Curry for not being as good this season. Something I'd like to do, by the way, is actually look month to month, because if I recall, he had a really, really, really wretched start and like was
Yes.
below average. And now he's great. So, it's the averaging thing. Like there was a few seasons ago where LaMarcus Aldridge ended the season very good. And at the start of the season was very bad. So it's not hard math to go, well, if he's very good now and was very bad to start, he had to play really, really good to get there. So I think to Curry's point, he is a worse player this season, but let's give him two things. One, he was injured to start the season. I freaking hate how people underestimate injury. Two, they added Durant to the mix, and there's overlapping skill sets, which means some of the threes that some of the easy threes that Curry and Clay were going to get aren't theirs anymore. So fine. But you can't say he's not a great player. And yeah, I think your point is right, where we might say he's worse than last year, but we would probably just say regression to the mean, right? Because last season, anytime you break an NBA record in something, it's an amazing season, and it's kind of ridiculous to expect you to maintain that. So I think there might be some regression to the mean, but I think you're right. I think people are just noticing the points things, and this was the exact same bullshit that happened on the Celtics in '08. Everybody
Mm.
made this argument. They said all of the Celtics are sacrificing for each other so that they can win. And when I looked at the numbers, all of them were better per minute. The only change that happened is because they started blowing teams out, Doc Rivers got to sit them in the fourth, and they were all playing fewer minutes. So all of their numbers were better, but they played fewer minutes. So when people said sacrifice, they didn't get that these players weren't sacrificing anything. They were all still playing top level. They were just playing fewer minutes per game. So Curry is right. People just notice totals. And on a team that rests stars, that gives players days off, that distributes the ball among their scorers, people aren't going to notice Curry's greatness. They're going to do what you're saying. Just notice totals and say, why are you
Yeah,
worse than that?
I hopefully want to break down because he made several different, very specific comments about how well he's played this year. I want to break all that down and see if he's onto something and or not. Like, who
If you
knows?
give me any of it, I will be
I'm
happy to
interested.
look for tomorrow or Friday, Brian. If you want to give me that data, we can maybe work on it together. Anyway, so second seed is Spurs versus who? I don't even know the outcome of the
Oh yeah,
West.
let's get this up here. Yeah, so the West is pretty much decided. Yeah, it's gonna be Spurs versus Memphis Grizzlies, almost for sure. Houston, Oklahoma City
So,
are gonna.
so you're noting the Memphis Grizzlies are beating the Thunder right now. So is it possible they go up?
They're 3 games back or 2.5,
Uh,
so it's gonna be really tough for them
that,
to
that,
go up there.
that gains a full one, and they still got a couple games to go.
That's
So
true. It could happen, but it's more likely that it's going to be the 4-5 matchup of. Oh, I'm sorry. They go up to 6 and face Houston instead of OKC. Yeah, that could happen. It could happen, but
so
yeah,
okay versus I hope that stays consistent because
the
the Thunder.
Harden Bowl, right? Houston versus
Yeah,
OKC.
Thunder versus that would be amazing. Also you get the narrative one way or the other, right? If Westbrook wins the MVP but Harden takes the series, you have the same narrative that happened with Hakeem versus David Robinson back in the day, or vice versa. So that's a lot of fun there. I'll point this out. First round is kind of rough. I don't give a damn about the Eastern Conference at all. I wish I could. I care about the game that's happening right now, which I hope will happen in the Eastern Conference at some point, which is the Cavaliers versus the Celtics. But even that series, I care less about than I care about the Rockets versus the Thunder. Um, I just don't care about the East. They're far weaker, and really, it's got to be the same hope as last year. They got to hope that whatever team makes it to the final, whoever makes it out of the East, has to hope that whatever team makes it out of the Western Conference is so banged up and worn down, because that you actually got to give the Thunder an assist to the Cavaliers. I think them pushing that game to 7 had to have helped out Cavaliers, right? It's worn
Yeah.
down, mentally a little off, right? Draymond Green does another kick. He makes a stupid decision. So I really, really think that helped a lot. And that it's the same hope this year. Bob Bulgaris made that point to someone because I think Daryl Morey said if you looked at it right, the teams that are most likely to win the finals, Spurs, Warriors, Rockets, and then of course the issue is you're only allowed to send one of those three teams to the finals. So
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'll say though is that it's boring in past seasons and maybe at the beginning of this season because everyone's like, well, it's just Cavs no matter what. Now, I mean, some people are going both ways. Maybe the Celtics are the favorite. Maybe the Cavs are the favorite because their defense is so bad. Whether or not we actually agree with that or not, I think that's a sentiment among a lot of NBA fans.
yeah, the Cavs look the weakest they have. You brought up some stuff where you talked about how, essentially that the Cavs like have had like a horrendous defensive rating. I think you said like 22nd in the NBA since.
That's the big meme right now. They're 22nd in the league in D rating.
Is that total like for the whole
for
season?
the whole season? Yeah.
Jeez, all right. Yeah, they've been playing rough. They've had some injuries in and out. They are super duper top heavy, which, I was going to say that the funny thing to me, just a slight tangent, is teams seem to get the most complacent in how they select surrounding players when they have a big three. When really that's when you have to be the most vigilant because those big three are going to suck all of your assets eventually. And you really, really need to get a good core around them. And that's why the Spurs are amazing, right? The Spurs, essentially, the joke I called it is the Spurs always have an Eastern Conference playoff team on their bench. There's always a team that could make the Eastern Conference playoffs that the Spurs can call up. The stupid replacement level player meme. The Spurs actually have replacement level players.
And Dre, let's not forget that when the Warriors and Spurs played in that infamous game where both teams rested all of their stars, the Spurs bench destroyed the Warriors bench, even though the Warriors have all these great players on their bench. So yeah, the Spurs bench is ridiculous.
You could also probably make the argument that I think the Warriors have a great bench, but I think they have a lot of great complementary pieces. I don't necessarily think they have a full replacement team. And to be fair, you don't really need one, right? If you've got Steph Curry and Andre Iguodala, you're not really worried about having a point guard. And then what's his name has been playing well, Sean Livingston. Like I think their bench isn't a complete rot team that I would necessarily call a cohesive unit.
That's fair. So it's not as well balanced as the Spurs, but the Warriors might have bigger stars on their bench.
You don't need it, right? You just need a bench that's basically if a couple of players are out, you're able to replace them. And then because Draymond Green and Steph Curry are pretty versatile, you're never really worried as long as they're like not both out. That's the fear, right? Draymond and Curry, but Draymond being out with suspension and Curry being like half of himself with injury. That's the
you're
fear.
saying in terms of ball handling and playmaking, where the assists come from.
As long as one of Draymond or Curry is healthy, that team is likely fine.
Let's not forget, Iguodala is leading the league in assist to turnover ratio this year. All the NBA.
Love Iguodala.
He can pass.
So at least to just point out, you said basically the West is pretty much set. I really just hope the Nuggets can make it, although it's probably going to be Portland, and I'm not excited.
I fear the Nuggets much more than Portland just because Jokic is by far the best player between both of those teams. Like, he could just go off, especially if the Warriors play small ball. So I fear the Nuggets a little bit.
Yeah, well, that being said, if Portland makes it, I just want Portland crushed. I want them crushed in order for keeping the Nuggets out of the playoffs.
Schadenfreude, the word of the week.
If the Nuggets made it to that, I wouldn't be sad if they got shut out. I might find a way to try and get back to Denver to watch a playoff. That would be cool. 2 versus 7, right? The Spurs versus the Grizzlies. It's odd how many times these teams have met in the playoffs. Don't really care. Think the Spurs should easily take it. 3 versus 6, as we mentioned, Houston versus OKC. Oh my God, I love this. I love this matchup. I want this matchup. This matchup looks so great. And then 4 versus 5, which is Utah versus
the Clippers. Yeah, and they have almost the same record, so it's not clear who's going to be the home team there.
I'm happy with whoever advances. I mean, it's a boring one. I'm kind of mad at the Clippers and that they have wasted a big 3. I saw some B-ball breakdown tweet saying the Griffin experiment is over or whatever, and the reality is Griffin has not been healthy in a while. And that there was this brief period of time where DeAndre Jordan, Chris Paul, and Blake Griffin were all healthy. And had there been a decent bench around them, that team could have done something. And
they beat the Spurs, right? They knocked the Spurs out of the playoffs.
Yeah. They put Doc Rivers in charge, though. And Doc Rivers is not a good coach and not a good general manager and wasted the prime of some great players. So
I will say DeAndre Jordan versus Rudy Gobert, matchup of the 2 best centers in the NBA going right now. There's argument for some other guys, but 2 of the best. That'll be awesome.
I'm excited for that. And then, like I said, out east, I don't give a damn until it's Cleveland versus Boston. So wake me for when that
And
happens.
everyone in the East, kind of in the second half, has the same record. Like they're all around 500, and that could shift around a lot. So yeah, who knows what's going to happen
The
there?
only question I have is, there's some news that Dwayne Wade might be coming back for the
The
Bulls.
Bulls have been playing better lately.
The Bulls have been playing better, and the reality is Wade was not a good piece for that team to pick up. So I really wonder if he's gonna keep him out of the playoffs when he comes back. We've talked this before. Old players think that they're helping when they come back injured or beat up, and they often hurt. Right? It's the person that says, "Let me help," and then they screw everything up. So
And
yeah,
again, talking about like who the best player in the series is, if it does end up being Boston versus Chicago Bulls, Jimmy Butler is probably better than anyone they have, especially with Isaiah Thomas a little bit dinged up. I mean, maybe he'll go off in the playoffs, but Jimmy Butler could go off on the Celtics too. Don't let Arturo hear me saying this, but yeah, who knows? And the Celtics could be the number one seed. Who knows?
yeah, we'll have to find. I think the Celtics will suffer from that number one seed of maybe that's not happening right now. They're going to be a full game. They're going to be a full game back with 3 games to play after this
That
game.
being
So
said, Dre, they might not want to fight too hard because if they do end up facing the 8th seed Indiana Pacers and Lance Stevenson, they better watch out. Lance is here to play,
I'm going to let
baby.
us
I love Lance.
forgot 2 topics. Just I want to throw this out there. I don't want to devote too much time. The people who are freaked out because Lance laid up the ball with 5 seconds to go instead of dribbling out the clock. And as a result, that justifies getting in a fighting match and saying Lance was a disgrace to the game when getting in a just not.
Give me a break.
Shut up. And I hate that. And we're going to talk baseball in a second. Like I said, we're going a little over to do it. Baseball is the sport that has all of these stupid arcane rules about like you're not supposed to disrespect the pitcher doing this. You're not supposed to disrespect the thing doing
And if you
that.
do, I'm allowed to throw it at your head 90 miles an hour. That could kill you.
Yeah, to do that. Someone tried to think what choked Bryce Harper because he didn't run out an obvious ground ball out, which is like if he was going to make that run out, it was going to be on an error, which means he would have known pretty quickly there was an error to speed up. So I hate the like gentlemanly, don't disrespect the unwritten rules of the game bullshit. So with that said, with the Lance Stevenson thing that happened the other game that got in a fighting match, I think with Toronto, I don't care. And if you're someone who says that Lance Stevenson did something to disrespect the game doing that, maybe, but then I'm just going to counter back and say that unwritten rule is stupid. It's a stupid unwritten rule. It's a stupid unwritten rule. If you're going to bitch about flopping, if you're going to bitch about the game taking too long, you should bitch about players.
That's a great piece of hypocrisy there.
Good. All right. So you wanted to suggest just a kerfluffle by Major League Baseball, who I just bashed for having a bunch of outdated thinking. They actually tried to get into the 21st century with analytics, and we argue the wrong way because what they've done is they've added, all these win probability charts that we can see every game. Major League Baseball on their basically the ESPN scoreboard that you'll see on the broadcast has added a win probability. And we argue that's a bad decision because the reality is baseball is boring. Baseball is boring. Baseball is boring. And if you tune into a baseball game and realize that even if you think your team might have a shot at coming back, you look and you go, they have a 3% shot. I argue you're just going to flip the channel. And, we kind of noted that this is kind of trying to copy poker, where poker did this and it works to great effect. But the issue with poker is a hand is about 3 minutes long. And not only that, you get some behind the scenes stuff, right? In baseball, I don't want to see what the pitcher is thinking. I don't want to see what the catcher is thinking. I don't want to see what the batter's thinking. But in poker, you can do that, right? You can have the person going, so-and-so is holding pocket aces and thinks he's in great spot, but doesn't realize he's drawing dead because so-and-so has this, da-da-da-da-da, et cetera, et cetera. That's interesting. That is, baseball already takes too freaking long, right? A few years ago, I read about how baseball might need a shot clock. Baseball's already too long. So we don't want to have analysis over what the pitcher and batter are thinking. And the difference being a poker hand is a couple of minutes long, maybe 5 to 10 minutes if it's a really interesting segment with yelling or something. A baseball game is like 3 to 4 hours long. So there is not the refresh rate on a baseball game to make this a good part of broadcasting. So that's my thought.
Yeah, and so the reason we started talking about this is an awfulannouncing.com article that I found. And Awful Announcing is a great media criticism site. They have a lot of numbers on ratings and all that. So, yeah, I mean, everyone who listens to us probably knows about it. But anyway, check it out. So, yeah, the headline of this article is many fans were not pleased with ESPN showing win probability during baseball broadcasts. And they link a bunch of tweets of people complaining about it. So, yeah, I mean, We pretty much agree with everything you said. So Andrew emailed us about that as well, saying, "Yeah, as a fan, I love this because if I tune in and see my team has a 3% chance to win, I'm just not going to watch. That benefits me as a fan." And yeah, I
But
mean, you go
hurts
ahead.
if ESPN's argument, if ESPN's business model, which is hurting, right? They're
Exactly.
getting subscribers. If their business model is, eyeballs, and they're adding something that basically Andrew is admitting the benefit of this feature is I can change the channel.
Yep.
That's not a
You're
good
doing it
decision.
wrong, and that's what Patrick wrote as well. No, what, and also, yeah, to add to that point, it's rumored right now that ESPN is about to shed hundreds of on-air personalities. Like they are cutting back big time. So yeah, apparently, they're not doing that well, and they do need to switch things up. But yeah, I mean, so Patrick's main point is basically that, right? That if we actually have the text of what he wrote here. Yeah, people might start watching because their team has it in the bag or they can't win. It's not like when people leave the stadium early, the team already took your money for the ticket and the concession stands. But because when you're watching on TV, you just keep getting ad revenue, right? So they should want to make people keep watching. I pretty much agree with that. What's interesting to me about this is why the fans don't like it is nothing about that. What it really is about is we can scroll down and show some of these. Is that they just don't agree with ESPN's methodology. There's a bunch of they think the math is wrong. Like there's a bunch of people saying stuff like, "You said 3%, but we still won. Fuck you, ESPN. You're an idiot, and you're wrong, and we are right. How dare you doubt our team?" And see, me as a fan, I have the opposite reaction. I'm like, well, if I know that my team has a 3% chance to win, and they actually make it happen and come back, that's amazing, right? That's really cool, and that's something I'd want to see. And every sports fan can think back to all these crazy comeback games they've watched over the years, right? One that sticks out to me for some reason is the Tuck Rule game, where the Patriots kicked all those field goals from 40
But by the
plus,
way, just as a note, field goals. Field goals are boring in football.
That's a whole nother topic. Well, those ones weren't, though. Those were in, sub-zero weather with all this wind and snow. Those were really tough kicks.
Fair enough. But here's what I was going to say. It's worth noting, I mentioned at the top of the show there 1,230 NBA games in a given regular season. And there are, 32 baseball teams that have 161 games.
I want to get to this next, too. So 3% happens all the time, doesn't it?
Percent happens all
the time.
Yeah. You would expect 40 to 50 times in a year for major 5% sub upsets and things to happen. And then as they mentioned, the methodology might be wrong. So I think I don't know.
Like let's say there's 10 games per day, something like that, maybe a little bit less. Yeah, you're going to have several of these per week even, aren't you? A lot of the time. So I don't know.
This has got to be boring to the listener. We're like discussing math methodology.
Well, yeah, that's what our goal for the show, I think. Like we've got to give those different edges.
All right, so we're at about an hour, so I don't necessarily really want to talk WrestleMania. I'm just going to ask Brian's, haiku tweet opinion.
Haiku.
What did you think of WrestleMania 33?
This is not going to be a haiku. I'm not even going to try it. I mean, it was enjoyable. I mean, obviously, like, Hardy's is the big thing, and that was great. Although, unfortunately, it looks like Broken Matt is not coming over, probably because, they don't want to pay him the royalty rights or whatever. So it's just going to be regular Matt Hardy, but that's fine.
So I will give a funny note. For those of you that don't know wrestling and
Did I say
Broken
ESPN? I meant WWE, sorry.
So WWE, for those of you who don't know how this works, you have like character personas, and it's possible that whichever company you started this persona in might own the rights to that character. And so Matt Hardy, for those of you who aren't fans of the Attitude Era wrestling, he's a wrestler that was really big in WWE back in the day. He had some drug and abuse problems, went to other wrestling companies, and is coming back. And this last season came up with a character persona called Broken Matt Hardy that got really over and really popular. But the company he did it for, which is Impact Wrestling, argues they own the rights, and WWE might not want to pay. That's freaking stupid. That should be an easy amount of money for them to give over. Why would
That's just their policy, kind of like, NFL team stadium building that municipalities need to pay for it. I think that's just so. Here's the famous example, Dre. You know this one.
That'd be like hiring James Harden and then telling him you
Yeah.
aren't allowed to shoot threes because the Rockets say that you owe him 5 cents for the use of the word Moneyball or something.
No,
or
so
more.
Daniel Bryan, right? One of your favorite guys. That's his name in WWE. That's not his real name. His real life name is Bryan Danielson, but they made him change it to Daniel Bryan when he joined just because of that. So there you go.
So anyway, yeah, for those of you that aren't wrestling fans, it's already sounding silly, but what I'll note is a lot of characters are basically rip-offs of other characters. There's a very popular character named Razor Ramon, who basically is just Scarface.
Yeah.
And then Matt Hardy is really, really a very similar. Am I wrong on this? Really similar to like Johnny Depp, Pirates of the Caribbean, like in terms of like.
Oh, interesting. I think it's a little more than that, but yeah, no, I mean, you're right.
He added, it's the great artist copy, good artist copy, great artist steal. I would say he definitely made it his own. But it does get funny to see people going, no, that is, WWE in the past did that. They said, Razor Ramon is our character. You're not allowed to use that character. And you go, it's Scarface. It's like, anyway. That's all I got. You said it's enjoyable, and the Hardys returning is cool. Obviously, the Undertaker retiring is a big deal. That's a good shout. I'll get a shout out to
that's the big one, man. Undertaker retiring to try to put over Roman Reigns again. Come on.
They're just doing it wrong. I mean, it's the playing Kevin Durant at shooting guard. For those of you who don't know wrestling, Roman Reigns is a very attractive, awesome brute of a man that should be a star, but the argument for people that are wrestling fans is WWE is not using him correctly, and they continue to not use him correctly despite feeding him to a bunch of other stars. So
and he can't talk. That's the biggest one.
Well, he might be able to talk. I mean, it's the how. I think he did get some credit. I can't believe you got me going over on this, Brian. He did get some credit for Monday Night Raw because he came out 5 words is what they said, and that's like what you want him to do. You come out, he lets the crowd boo him. He doesn't say a lot. That hasn't been how they've been using him. So we'll see if WWE has figured it out. I haven't watched. I canceled WrestleMania hearing about WrestleMania 32. So I hadn't watched WrestleMania 32. I heard about it and was like, nope, I'm done. I canceled my WWE Network subscription. I was debating maybe re-upping it for WrestleMania 33. I have not been encouraged yet to do so, so we'll see.
I enjoyed it. All the matches were pretty good, except for Undertaker Reigns. So yeah, it was good.
All right, so with that in mind, I said I already gave my shout out to Undertaker. That's pretty much all I got. Thanks to the comment section, had some good ones this week. Actually doing multiple freaking columns a week. I might try and get back to that at some point. So we'll see how that goes. Anybody to shout out before we head out, Brian?
No. In this, actually, no. I do have one. No, I don't. Just to you, Dre, for being on the show this week, and to Patrick and Andrew for being awesome, and all the great commenters.
All right, so thanks so much. This has been the Boxscore Geek Show. If you found us not through the website, you can find us at boxscoregeeks.com. We go live usually Tuesday or Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/Nerd Numbers. If you missed the live show, you can catch the recap on YouTube, channel Nerd Numbers. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher, the Boxscore Geek Show. Subscribe, upvote, helps us out. I've been your host, Dre Alvarez, a.k.a. Nerd Numbers, produced as always by Brian Foster, on Twitter as Boxscore Brian. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.